G'day, g'day, g'day. This is Charlie, and I'm coming to you with your daily dose of business inspiration. Topic number 216 today, positive leadership. I have done a number of episodes on leadership. I know that some of you who have been following this podcast for a while will have heard them. For those of you that are new, if you're interested, you can go back through the episodes and find them, or drop a comment. And as I find them and remember them, I will put them in here. I will refer you to the interview I did with Stephen Morris on the 3 C's of leadership. He was excellent, had some really good things to say, and it really got my creative juices flowing. It made me stop and think about a few things, and it also brought back to me a number of things that I knew I was doing, but I wasn't doing them consciously, and I'm now trying to really focus on doing them consciously. And that's something that I would really encourage you all as leaders to do, is look at the behaviors that you are exhibiting, look at the things you are doing, and do the good things consciously, and be conscious about the things that you need to eliminate from your behaviors. That's the first thing about positive leadership. The other things that I want to kind of hit here quickly is, to me, positive leadership is leading by example, which also means to a great degree, and this isn't a blanket statement, that you wouldn't ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. It's not a blanket statement, because sometimes you have to, if only for skill, or safety reasons, i.e. you don't have the safety qualification and they do. Not that it's not safe for you to do it, therefore you're going to get someone else to do it. That's terrible, by the way. But you wouldn't ask someone to do something that you aren't prepared to do yourself. And Mike Rowe, what was it, Dirty Jobs? I loved that show. I only saw a couple of episodes. But, he'd get in and he'd do the jobs that staff were being asked to do. They wouldn't know who he was, but he would learn that work and he would do it, and he'd work out just how hard it was to do that work, and what was required to do it. So he had a better understanding of what his staff needed, how hard his staff were working to do that. And that's another example of positive leadership. Positive leadership is really, really important, I think, for your morale and your productivity. If we don't have positive leadership, you're going to have a team that really is just doing things because they're scared. And a team that does things because they're scared are definitely not going to be performing at their best. They're going to be more worried about, am I going to get in trouble for this, rather than how can I delight people. Such a mindset change. I learned a lot about positive leadership thinking on it, because I'm not sure it is actually a leadership skill per se, but there were techniques there that I could then bring into my leadership skills. When I started training, or no, not when I started training dogs, when I was training dogs, I learned a new technique called operant conditioning training. Psychology. It works beautifully. And what operant conditioning training is about, it's about letting your subject, the person that you are training, trying to teach, to do things and work out what works and what doesn't, and reward them for the good behaviors and ignore the bad behaviors. So you're not penalizing the bad behaviors, and I can come back to that a bit later, but you're not penalizing the bad behaviors, but what you are doing is rewarding the good behaviors, which is then going to amplify those behaviors further. And that, to me, is kind of the core of positive leadership. You recognize achievements, you encourage open communications. If someone brings to you something that is really hard to hear, and as a team leader and as someone who manages teams, I know my staff get really worried. My team gets really worried about bringing me something, saying, "Hey, Charlie, you didn't do this." And, how can you tell? the boss, they haven't done their job. Well, partially because that's your job to tell me I haven't done my job so that I can do my job better next time. And that's how I handle it, is when they bring it to me, I'm like, "Oh, well, I messed that up, didn't I? Thank you so much for identifying that I didn't do that. Thank you for fixing it, and I will endeavour to be better next time." And I try to remember, no, I have to do that next time. But that's some of the things about positive leadership. It's about empowering your team. It's about leading by example. And I've said that earlier in this episode, didn't I? Leading by example. You do the things and you model the behaviors that you want your team members to model themselves and to exhibit to themselves. Okay, let me come back to not just work being in the business environment. Let's be in the home environment. And let's be that parent figure or the adult figure in the house. And people are always leaving dishes in the sink. And this is something that drives me batty, by the way. It really, really annoys me so much. Come in and there's dirty dishes. They're on the side, they're on the sink, they've not been rinsed. Sometimes there's stuff caked onto them. And when you live in a group house, no one cleans it. Like, no one actually cleans up after themselves. Well, again, I'm using absolutes, but it feels like that. Now, I have a choice when I walk into that kitchen and I see that mess. I have a couple of choices. I can drop my plate, my bowl, my cup, and I can leave it there and contribute to the problem. I can get really, really cranky and really, really upset and go out and say to people, "Hey guys, do you think you could clean up? When you put your stuff out there, do you think you could clean up?" How do you reckon that goes down? It don't go down real well. It really doesn't go down real well. I can clean it up. I can just clean my bowl and plate and put my bowl and plate away. And maybe I can take my bowl and plate and a few things and just say, "These are mine," have them off somewhere so that they can't all get used. And then when I want to go and use the kitchen, get my stuff out, use it, clean it up, put it away. That seems like it's a bit self-defeating, really, because then you've got to have somewhere to put it. I can clean up all of it, which is what I do. I clean it all up. I take my time. I clean it all up. I clean the side down. I put the dishes away. And then I might, or I might not, go out and say, "Just so you know, I've cleaned the kitchen. All of your stuff is away. If you're missing anything, let me know. I will see if I can remember where I put it because I put stuff away." I could also just leave it. I could also just not say anything, just leave the kitchen as it is and walk away. Either of those last two approaches is reasonable. I tend more to the last part, just do it and leave. And the reason I do that is I'm in there, in and out of there regularly, like once every a couple of times a day. So doing it once a day, even twice a day, and making sure it's clean, that helps my mindset. It helps me keep things running. It makes me feel better about things. I'm not stressing or have that visceral reaction to, "Oh, it's such a mess in here and I can't work." Uh, and by me doing it, I'm setting an example, and at least one other person will pick that up. They may not do it to the same degree I do it. They may not do it to the same standard I do it, but they will pick it up. Now, if I translate that, I've gone on a little bit long about that one, but if I translate that back into the business environment and someone is never filling the photocopier paper, and going back to, talking about showing my age, eh? You go to the photocopier and the paper's out yet again. That was a big one. Yet again, the paper is out. I could stamp around. I could throw the paper on the desk and make a big thumping sound as I'm pulling it out and putting it in. I might have done that a couple of times. It's a bit younger, not quite so enlightened, I guess, and put it all together. Or I could just do it. Or I could go out into the office and say, "Who used the photocopier last? Why didn't you fill up the paper? Do you think that last one is going to have any impact on anyone. It has an impact on me. I'm angry. I'm upset. And now people are looking at me like I am some idiot, some cranky, cranky young woman who has an entitlement issue. And maybe I did at the time. But there's some things about positive leadership is that even down to those little things, and now it might be that what I would do is I'd go and change over the photocopier paper and walk out and say, "Hey guys, there's new paper in the photocopier. I changed it. Can you just keep an eye out when you're using it? If it's getting low, just top it up. That would be really helpful. Thanks." And just leave it. That's how I would handle it. I would love to know some of your thoughts on all of this because I'm going on a little bit, but I'm trying to give you some really practical examples of how you as a leader can bring that in yourselves, how you as a leader can demonstrate to your staff the standard that is required or expected or wanted or however you want to put it. Some of that is a really strong language. So you need to foster a positive working environment. If you are always going to be telling people they're doing things wrong and it's not good enough and it's not this and it's not that, your team aren't going to be happy. Your team aren't going to your team aren't going to know if they're going to be in trouble or not. You need to be consistent, which leads into you need to be consistent. You need to be consistent in your feedback and in the way you do things. And if one day the coffee pot is empty and you blow your stack, and the next day the coffee pot isn't, and I'm using some really mundane examples here, and the next day the pot is empty and you don't blow your stack, people aren't going to know whether how you're going to respond. So they're going to be walking on eggshells, and that's not a great environment either. You need to recognize their achievements. You need to take this away from yourself as their leader and start recognizing their achievements because trust me, they will step up and they will start leading by example themselves. The more you encourage them, the more positive feedback you give them, the better it will be for them. Now, I'm not saying you give them positive feedback when they're doing wrong or when their behavior or their performance is not good enough. But when their performance and their behavior is good, you need to be making sure that you're telling them that it's good and that they're doing the right thing. You need to have some open communication. You need to be willing that when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, Charly, you used the photocopier last and there was no paper in it. Can you not do that? Or can you be mindful of that next time?" Rather than going, "Well, I don't see why that's my problem," need to be saying, "Thank you so much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate that you've brought that to me. Thank you." And take it on board. I may or may not choose to do something with it, but they've had the guts to come and bring it to bring it to me and open up to me. I need to acknowledge that and respect that within them. We also need to give them some strategies or give our team managers strategies for managing challenges and setbacks with a positive mindset. Something doesn't work. Rather than saying, "Well, what went wrong and how did that happen?" And, "Oh, that's a waste of money." It's really easy to do, isn't it? Really, really easy to do. We as leaders need to say, "Ha, fancy that. You've just found another way that doesn't work. What are we going to do about that?" You can make a joke about it. You can be lighthearted about it. Or maybe you could approach it in terms of, "Okay, so that didn't work. What did we learn from it?" Post-incident reviews, post-action reviews, I think they're called. Really, really important. Even when things have gone well, do it. But have a look at when things are failing, how are you reacting? How are you responding? How are you encouraging your employees or team members to respond in those situations? Are you making it such a drama for them that they just don't want to fail? Or are you making it a, "Oh, well, we won't be doing that again, will we?" type thing. It makes such a difference to people. I can talk about any number of volunteer organisations I've walked into where there have been previous leadership teams where it's all about the leaders and nothing gets done. And if things aren't done the way they want it done, they get cranky and your volunteers don't want to be there. And then you get someone like me come in who really doesn't want a leadership position, but might take on a subcommittee. And then I'll say, okay, cool. How are we going to do it? What do you want to do? What's your experience in this? How do we do this? How can I help you do your job better? And it's an entirely different response at that point. I have rabbited so much in this episode. I hope you've got something out of it. I wanted to give some really personal anecdotes though and talk more at a personal level, and share some of my own experiences. I don't know whether they're useful for you. I don't know whether the way I approach them is useful. Maybe it's not. I would love to hear though. I'd love to know what you're thinking, what your reactions are when I say some of these things. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave some comments wherever you're listening to or watching this. I will respond to them. You can come across to Locals, askcharlyleetham.locals.com, and join the community and join the discussions there. And let's see where we go with it. Our next episode is episode 217. Ooh, we're going to talk about risk taking, which is kind of a flow on from positive leadership, I guess. In the meantime, have a fabulous day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.